The rain-slicked streets of Seattle glistened under the sodium glow of flickering streetlights, a city that never quite slept but always seemed to turn its back when you needed it most. My boots splashed through shallow puddles, each step echoing in the quiet of 2 a.m. as I trudged home from another grueling night shift at Circuit Fix, a hole-in-the-wall tech repair shop tucked in the industrial underbelly of Sodo. My hands were stuffed deep in my jacket pockets, fingers numb from the damp chill, my breath puffing out in faint clouds. I was bone-tired, the kind of tired that seeps into your soul after hours spent hunched over cracked iPhone screens and fried laptop motherboards. My name's Liam, and at 24, I was already questioning every choice that had led me here. The shop wasn't much. Greasy counters, flickering fluorescents, and a boss who thought on time meant 10 minutes early, but it paid enough to keep me from starving. I'd taught myself to code since I was a kid, building websites for local bands and hacking together apps in my free time. Circuit Fix let me flex those skills, fixing gadgets for small businesses and late-night drifters who'd drop their phones in bar toilets. It wasn't the dream my family had for me. Hell, it wasn't my dream either, but it was mine, and I'd carved it out without their help. My family, Claire, Nathan, and their golden boy, Ethan, ran Foster Machinery, a rusty old equipment supply business my granddad had built from nothing. They wanted me in the fold, pushing invoices and kissing client ass, but I'd walked away at 18. That choice cost me everything: college money, family dinners, even a place to call home. They'd cut me off like I was dead weight, and I'd been scraping by ever since. Tonight, my car, a beat-up '98 Civic, was in the shop with a busted alternator, and an Uber was a luxury I couldn't afford. The main roads were safer, lined with 24-hour diners and the occasional cop cruiser, but they added 15 minutes to my walk. I was exhausted, my eyes burning, my legs heavy. So I made a choice I'd regret for years. I turned down Mercer Alley, a narrow cut-through between sagging warehouses and chain-link fences. It was a shortcut I'd taken maybe twice before, always in daylight. At night, it was a different beast. Shadows pooling in corners, graffiti-smeared walls looming like silent threats. The air smelled of rust and stale beer, and the only sound was the distant hum of traffic, too far to matter. I hadn't gone 50 steps when the hairs on my neck prickled. Footsteps. Not mine. They were heavy, deliberate, scraping against the gravel behind me. My heart kicked up, a dull thud in my chest. I quickened my pace, telling myself it was nothing, a late-night worker, a drunk stumbling home. But the footsteps matched my rhythm, closing the gap. I risked a glance over my shoulder, and my stomach dropped. 3 figures in hoodies, faces obscured, moved toward me like wolves circling a wounded deer. One held something long and metallic, glinting faintly under a distant streetlight. A pipe. Another gripped what looked like a bat, tapping it lightly against his thigh. "Hey man, you got the time?" one called, his voice low, mocking. The others snickered, spreading out to block the alley's width. I didn't answer. My mouth was dry, my brain screaming, "Run!" I spun to bolt, but the alley stretched out endless before me, a tunnel with no light at the end. Before I could turn, something crashed into my back, hard, cold, unyielding. The pipe. Pain exploded through my spine, stealing my breath as I stumbled forward, hands scraping pavement. My knees hit the ground, gravel biting through my jeans. I tried to scramble up, but a boot slammed into my ribs, flipping me onto my back. The air rushed out of my lungs, and I gasped, staring up at the 3 shadows towering over me. "Wallet, phone, now," the leader growled, twirling the pipe like it was bored. I fumbled for my pockets, hands shaking, but another kick caught my side, and I curled into myself, choking on a scream. The bat came down, cracking against my thigh, and my vision swam. "Hurry up!" one of them snapped. I managed to toss my wallet, $20 and a useless debit card, toward them. My phone followed, an old Android with a cracked screen. They weren't satisfied. The leader leaned down, his breath hot and sour, and yanked my watch, a cheap Timex my old coworker Ryan had given me, off my wrist. Then, as if for sport, he swung the pipe again, this time across my face. I felt skin split, blood hot and wet streaming down my cheek, the sting so sharp it drowned out everything else. I tried to cover my head, arms trembling, but the blows kept coming, ribs, arms, back. I heard a crack, felt a white-hot agony sear through my left arm. Broken. They laughed, one of them muttering about teaching me a lesson. The leader grabbed my collar, dragging me up just enough to slam his fist into my jaw. My head snapped back, pavement meeting skull, and the world flickered. Somewhere in the haze, I heard tires screech nearby. A car, close, too close. Headlights flashed, cutting through the dark, and the thugs froze. The car swerved, its bumper grazing the alley wall, missing me by inches as I lay sprawled on the ground. The driver laid on the horn, a blaring wail that scattered the attackers. They bolted, footsteps fading into the night, leaving me crumpled and bleeding. I don't know how long I lay there, rain mixing with blood, every breath a knife in my chest. My vision blurred, sounds muffling, until a stranger's voice cut through. "Jesus, kid, you alive?" Hands grabbed me, rough but careful, and then nothing. Blackness swallowed me whole. When I woke, the world was too bright, too loud, beeping monitors, antiseptic stench, and a nurse's face hovering over me, her voice calm but urgent. "Can you hear me? You're in the ER at Harborview." My body was a map of pain. 3 broken ribs, a fractured left arm, a concussion, a bruised kidney, and a face sliced open from cheek to jaw, stitches pulling tight. The nurse rattled off the damage like a grocery list, but all I could think was, I'm alive, barely. My wallet, phone, and watch were gone. My pockets empty except for a crumpled Circuit Fix business card. No insurance, no way to pay for any of this. The hospital staff dug up my emergency contact, Claire, my mom, from some old paperwork I'd filled out years ago. I borrowed a phone from a nurse, my hands shaking as I dialed. Claire picked up on the 3rd ring, her voice sharp, annoyed, like I'd interrupted her Netflix binge. "Liam, what now?" I swallowed, tasting blood, and told her what happened. Alley, pipes, hospital, the works. I kept my voice steady, but inside I was begging for something, anything to anchor me. She sighed, long and heavy, like I'd just told her I'd scratched her car. "You got yourself beat to hell because you're out wandering at 2 a.m. like some loser with no real job. This is your mess, Liam, not mine." I froze, the phone slippery in my grip. "Mom, I need help. The bills, I can't." She cut me off. "You should have thought about that before you turned your back on the family. We're done cleaning up your messes." In the background, I heard Nathan, my uncle, ask who it was. Claire told him, and he demanded to be put on speaker. His voice boomed, thick with disdain. "Don't even think about asking for money, Liam. We're not throwing cash at your failures anymore. You made your bed." I couldn't help it. The words slipped out, bitter and raw. "What about Ethan's truck? 15 grand for his birthday, but I'm lying here with broken bones and you won't lift a finger?" Claire actually laughed, a cold, cutting sound. "Ethan's worth something. You? You're just the family screw-up." The line went quiet, the weight of her words crushing me heavier than any pipe. Then she delivered the final blow. "When you're discharged, don't come home. You're not welcome here anymore." The nurse, who'd been hovering nearby, looked away, her face tight with secondhand embarrassment. I handed her the phone, my chest hollow. My family had always treated me like garbage for choosing code over their precious business. Claire handled the books, Nathan ran sales, and Ethan, my cousin, who'd flunked out of community college, got handed a cushy management role. Me? I'd built my first website at 14, taught myself Python by 16, and still, they saw me as nothing. When I refused to join Foster Machinery after high school, they'd cut me off, no money, no support, no love. Now, lying in a hospital bed, blood crusted on my face, I realized they'd never cared. Not then, not now. Something inside me snapped, not with anger but with clarity. I smiled, my busted lips splitting open, pain sharp and grounding. "You'll regret this," I whispered, more to myself than to them. The nurse glanced over, concerned, but I just closed my eyes. They thought I was broken, finished. They didn't know I'd been studying their business for years, fixing computers for their clients, learning their supply chains every weak link. Their systems were dinosaurs, spreadsheets, paper invoices, a website that looked like it was coded in 1998. I knew their vulnerabilities, their biggest clients, their every mistake, and now they'd given me no reason to hold back. I was discharged 3 days later, ribs taped, arm in a cast, face stitched like a patchwork quilt. Ryan, my coworker, picked me up in his rusted F-150, his face grim as he helped me into the cab. "You look like hell, man," he said, tossing my hospital bag in the back. He'd offered his couch until I could figure things out, and I was grateful, but pride burned in my gut. I didn't want pity. I wanted a plan. We swung by Claire's house, my old home, to grab my stuff. She wasn't there, but she'd left my life in garbage bags in the garage, my clothes and books tossed like trash. Real classy. That night, on Ryan's lumpy couch, pain shooting through my ribs with every breath, I couldn't sleep. Not just from the injuries, but from the fire in my head. My family thought I was a failure because I fixed phones instead of pushing their outdated machinery. They didn't know how much I'd learned about their industry. Inventory systems, client needs, the gaps their competitors were already exploiting. Lying there, staring at Ryan's cracked ceiling, I made a promise to myself. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. This was about survival. About proving I was more than their punching bag. I borrowed Ryan's laptop, its fan whirring like a jet engine, and started digging. Foster Machinery's competitors, market trends, software that could streamline supply chains. My family's business was bleeding clients, and I knew why. Ethan, their golden boy, was botching orders left and right. Nathan's sales pitches were stuck in the ADS. Claire's bookkeeping was a mess of manual errors. They were vulnerable, and I was just getting started. The alley had nearly killed me, but it had also woken me up. They'd thrown me away, but I wasn't done, not by a long shot. In 1 year, I'd be stable. In 2, I'd make my move. In 4, I'd bury everything they valued, their business, their pride, their precious Ethan's truck. And when they came crawling back, begging for mercy, I'd smile that same busted lip smile and give them exactly what they'd given me. Nothing. The air in Ryan's cramped Seattle apartment smelled of stale coffee and motor oil, a reminder of his side hustle tinkering with bikes in the tiny garage below. I lay on his sagging couch, ribs screaming with every breath, my stitched-up face throbbing under the dim glow of a single lamp. It was my 3rd night here, 3 days since the hospital spit me out, and I was already itching to move. Not just off the couch, but forward, towards something bigger, sharper, something that would make Claire, Nathan, and Ethan choke on their smug dismissal. My family thought I was nothing, a broken kid with a useless job. They didn't know I'd been quietly studying their world for years, piecing together the cracks in Foster Machinery's crumbling empire while fixing laptops for their clients. I knew their business was a house of cards, outdated, sloppy, bleeding money, and I was going to topple it. The medical bills loomed like a guillotine, $25,000, 0 cents, and climbing, a number that felt like a life sentence for someone scraping by on $15, 0 cents an hour. My arm was still in a cast, typing one-handed, a nightmare, and the scar across my cheek pulled tight every time I spoke. The alley had left more than bruises. It had carved a permanent reminder of my vulnerability into my face, but it also lit a fire. Every twinge of pain, every bill reminder stuffed in Ryan's mailbox, fueled me. I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to win. Job hunting was brutal. The economy was a dumpster fire, and my resume, a patchwork of freelance coding gigs and a year at Circuit Fix, didn't scream hire me. I applied to over 50 places, from startups to corporate giants, my one good hand pecking at Ryan's ancient laptop. Most didn't respond. A few called me in, only to grimace at my bruised face and 6-week employment gap. What happened here? One interviewer asked, eyeing my stitches like they were a red flag. I mumbled something about a personal accident and watched his interest fade. Rejection after rejection piled up, and doubt crept in, whispering that maybe Claire was right, maybe I was a loser. One night, I woke up gasping, my ribs protesting as I bolted upright from a nightmare. In it, I was back in the alley, but this time, the thugs weren't strangers. They were Nathan, Ethan, and Claire, their faces twisted with contempt as they swung pipes. I stumbled to Ryan's bathroom, splashing cold water on my face, the scar glaring back in the mirror. I couldn't go back to them. I'd rather sleep under a bridge than beg. Ryan found me there, hunched over the sink, and sighed. Dude, maybe it's time to call your family. Work it out. I grabbed my cracked phone, already a casualty of my temper, and hurled it at the wall, shattering the screen completely. I'd rather die, I snapped. He didn't push it again. By week 4, I was desperate. The hospital's payment plan was a noose, $200, 0 cents a month I didn't have. Claire started texting, not to check on me, but to nag about picking up my stuff from her garage. It's in the way, she wrote, like my life was just clutter. Then came the kicker, a demand to pay my share of the family phone plan. I blocked her number, cutting one more tie. It felt like freedom, but it also left me untethered, drifting in a city that didn't care if I sank or swam. Then a break. A small software company in Portland, Cascade Solutions, posted a job for an entry-level data analyst. They built supply chain management tools for industrial businesses, the exact industry Foster Machinery floundered in. The odds felt like fate. I polished my resume, hiding the scars and gaps as best I could, and drove down for the interview in Ryan's truck, wincing every time I shifted gears with my casted arm. The hiring manager, a guy named Brad with a firm handshake and sharp eyes, didn't flinch at my appearance. He cared about my skills, grilling me on database queries and coding frameworks. I answered with confidence I didn't feel, leaning on years of self-taught knowledge. 2 days later, I got the call. The job was mine, barely above minimum wage, but it was a start. Moving to Portland meant leaving Ryan's couch, a bittersweet relief. I found a shoebox studio in a gritty part of town, the kind of place where the shower was practically in the kitchen and the walls vibrated with the neighbor's TV. It was $800, 0 cents a month, a stretch, but mine. The first night I sat on a mattress on the floor, no bed frame, no furniture, and let myself cry, not from pain or sadness, but from the weight of starting over. I'd clawed my way out of that alley, out of Claire's rejection and into something real. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep going. At Cascade, I started small. Data entry, basic coding, the grunt work nobody wanted, but I watched everything. The company's software streamlined inventory, tracked shipments, and predicted client needs, light years ahead of Foster's paper and spreadsheet mess. One day, buried in client surveys, I saw it. Foster Machinery's name on a list of potential acquisition targets. My heart stopped. They were losing market share, hemorrhaging clients to firms like ours. Their systems were ancient, their delivery times abysmal, and Ethan, golden boy Ethan, was botching their biggest accounts. I didn't say a word to Brad, but I started digging, accessing reports I probably shouldn't have. Foster's weaknesses were laid bare. Late shipments, angry clients, cash flow problems. It was all there. A blueprint for their downfall. That's when the plan solidified. I wasn't just going to climb the ladder at Cascade. I was going to build something that would gut Foster Machinery from the inside out. Nights and weekends, I coded in my studio, the Hume of my laptop, my only company. I designed an inventory management system tailored to the exact problems Foster's clients faced. Misdeliveries, stock shortages, invoicing errors. It was lean, intuitive, and brutal in its efficiency. I tweaked it to look generic, not aimed at my family, and submitted it to Cascade's internal innovation program. Brad loved it, called it disruptive, and put me on a special project team. Suddenly, I was in meetings with execs, pitching ideas to people who saw me as more than a failure. But the past wasn't done with me. 8 months after the alley, I got invited to an industry conference in Denver to demo our software. I was nervous, not just about presenting, but about running into them. Foster Machinery always had a booth at these events, peddling their outdated wares. The night before, I was prepping my slides when LinkedIn pinged. Ethan had viewed my profile, then Nathan, then Claire, all within an hour. They knew where I worked, what I was building. They had to know I was coming for their industry. My stomach churned, but I didn't reach out. Let them sweat. At the conference, I set up my booth, a sleek touchscreen display showcasing our system's real-time tracking. Across the hall, Foster's booth was pathetic. Faded banners, stacks of paper brochures, Ethan in a suit 2 sizes too big, looking lost. Our eyes met, and his jaw dropped. shock and recognition hitting him like a freight train. I just smiled, the scar on my cheek pulling tight, and turned back to my demo. A crowd was already gathering, drawn to the tech, not the nostalgia Foster was selling. Game on. Halfway through the day, a burly guy in a Carhartt jacket approached. Mike, a construction company owner and one of Foster's biggest clients. He'd been dealing with them for years and was fed up. "They screwed up my last 4 orders," he growled, sipping a coffee. "That kid? Ethan? Keeps promising fixes, but it's all talk," I nodded, playing dumb, and showed him our system. His eyes lit up at the demo, the way it tracked inventory down to the bolt. "This could have saved me $50,000, 0 cents last quarter," he said. The next day, he signed a 6-month trial with Cascade. A week later, he canceled his contract with Foster. It was the first domino, and it felt better than I'd imagined. Back in Portland, I moved to a 1-bedroom apartment. No palace, but it had a real bed and a desk. My hospital debt was still a beast, but I chipped away at it. $300, 0 cents a month now. Cascade promoted me to Client Relations Manager, a title that came with a raise and real power. I used it targeting Foster's mid-sized clients, the ones they wouldn't notice slipping away until it was too late. I called them personally, offering demos, better terms, a system that actually worked. 5 clients jumped ship in 2 months. Ethan tried to friend me on Facebook, then DM'd me about grabbing a beer. The same guy who'd mocked my coding as nerd stuff while he played manager. I declined, hard. Then Claire showed up. I was coming home from the gym, sweat-soaked and sore, when I saw her by my building's entrance. She looked older, lines etched deep around her eyes, her usual confidence replaced by something fragile. She tried to hug me. I stepped back. "Liam, we were worried," she started, voice shaking. "We made mistakes." I crossed my arms, the silent accusation. "You remember what you said in the hospital, that I was worthless." She flinched, stammering about stress, about not meaning it. I cut her off. "What about Ethan's truck? 15 grand while I was bleeding out." Her face hardened and the truth spilled. Foster was tanking. They needed my computer skills to save it. I laughed, cold and sharp. "You should have thought about that before you threw me out." I walked past her, leaving her in the rain.